So this project came about first through my own research on the emotional and psychological impact of the Munich crisis and of appeasement in 1938. I then began a collaboration with writer-director Nicola Baldwin for the dramatization of F.L. Lucas's Journal Under the Terror, a source that I had found or reconnected with, if you like, which had been largely neglected by other historians, which I felt really illustrated and expressed the deep emotional impact, the deep psychological pain that ordinary people suffered as a result of the international crisis. Much of the research and much of what we know about appeasement and the Munich crisis is a history from above. My approach was different. I wanted to offer a history from below, how ordinary people, how the general public responded to this crisis and to the impending looming war. And I also wanted from there to take it a little bit literally deeper and offer a history from within of the crisis. And F.L. Lucas's Journal Under the Terror 1938 did just that. It gave us insight into how two people, himself and his wife, how they responded, and how they responded very negatively to the crisis. Indeed, she has a nervous breakdown, and he, along with her, suffers greatly as someone who is living alongside or trying to live alongside someone who is in such deep personal crisis. So in my teaching, I've been integrating these different kinds of sources about familiar subjects. And now working with teachers at high school level to do the same has been really, really illuminating and really satisfying ultimately. And I think what it does is offer again that very personal, that intimate, that private dimension to stories that have been told in a very externalized, a very remote kind of way, a history from above, a great man history. And I think the way that we use these intimate sources, some of them are quite traditional archival sources like Neville Chamberlain's papers, but we're looking at them in different ways.
So my name's Mark Eccleston and I'm one of a team of archivists based here at the Cadbury Research Library at the University of Birmingham. The Cadbury Research Library is home to the university's special collections, which comprises rare books and archive materials. And one of the most important collections that we house here are the papers of Neville Chamberlain. Neville Chamberlain's daughter donated the material to the university in the 1970s. About 15 years earlier, we'd already received a deposit of material relating to Neville's father, Joseph Chamberlain, who was former Lord Mayor of Birmingham, as well as papers of his elder half-brother, Austin Chamberlain, who was also a politician in the early 20th century. So I think the family felt that the Cadbury Research Library was the natural home for the archive material relating to Neville Chamberlain.
Ultimately, part of the project is about unearthing new material or material that has been neglected or overlooked. But the other aspect is to take familiar sources that have been picked over by historians for generations, and look at them differently. And here we're looking at them by taking this emotional turn, by validating and by interpreting, by trying to decode these documents according to the theoretical questions and the methodological insights of the history of emotion. Now that is, I think, really valuable in that it makes us relate to the figures that we're studying in a different way. It widens the scope of who we study. It really just deepens our understanding and the relatability of that moment in history to the kind of crises, turmoil, our sense of our own psychological awareness today.
So mass observation was established in 1937, and it was set up by three men, by Charles Madge was the originator, was founder of mass observation. He was all sorts of things. He was a poet, a surrealist, became an early sociologist, and he was really interested in ordinary people. So this is the 1930s, 1937. It's the year of the abdication of Edward. this is like a huge, strange now, but this is like a huge kind of social, cultural crisis. There was real anxiety about what this meant for the country, what this meant for people, and what people thought and what people felt about it.
So my name's Suzanne Rose and I'm the engagement manager for the Mass Observation Archive, and the archive is one of the many archives that lives here at the Keep, and today we're in the reading room at the Keep looking at some mass observation material related to the project on appeasement studies. So the Mass Observation Archive is a registered charity. We're in the care of the University of Sussex, and we are a national archive. We're based here at the Keep in the southeast of England, which is near Brighton, but we work nationally, and our collection is a national collection. We have a very small dedicated staff team of 4 people, and we're all part-time, and we're all women. And we work to ensure that there is access to the archive. It's a public archive, but my work mainly engages with schools, community groups, wider groups such as prisons, to work with the collection and to make it both more inclusive and more representative of the diversity of voices in Britain today. So we do lots of teaching sessions, we do community visits, we give talks, we have lots of students who come here and use the collection for their research, and we work with researchers and academics as well. So we're a very busy archive. We get lots of requests for information about our collection and opportunities to access it. We're open to the public here at the Keep, so people can drop in and come and visit the collection and look at the archive in its original form. We also have a digitised version of the archive. We've digitised from the early 30s up to about 2010 now, so people can use that on an online resource here at the Keep and at other institutions who may have that online package.
Yeah, I'm Sarah Davis. I'm curriculum leader for history and politics at King Edward VII School in Sheffield. I became involved in the project through connections with Julie and the University of Sheffield. I'm really interested in building a curriculum that highlights the voices of marginalised people from the past. And when Julie told me about the Journal of F.L. Lucas, I was just really inspired to know a little bit more. So I went along to the Teachers' Conference at the University of Sheffield, and I took my students to the school's event, and then we worked with Julie, Nicola Baldwin and Andrew Wren from the Historical Association to write an inquiry about permacrisis and Julie's process about how she's answered her research questions around 1938. A lot of the work that I've been doing is about using single sources to illuminate bigger stories and bigger themes from the past, and I was really inspired and excited about Prudy and her absence in the journal, and how Nicola and Julie have worked together to recreate her voice and her story, and I just wanted to share that with my students. As the project grew and we started to be introduced to more of the sources, so from the Chamberlain Archives and from the Mass Observation Archive, I realised I couldn't just focus on that one particular source. And actually my students would benefit from being able to understand Julie's process, and that would develop their procedural knowledge as well as their substantive knowledge. So what do historians actually do rather than just the teaching of appeasement? It's very much been about telling the stories of the authors of the sources rather than just sort of going through very traditional or stale sort of source work exercises that I guess most history teachers will be used to. Getting students to care about F.L. Lucas, getting students to care about Chamberlain and Annie has been a real game changer in terms of getting them to engage with very challenging source material. So using documents like this is really powerful because it helps to illuminate what historians actually do, and therefore it empowers students to ask and answer really interesting research questions of their own. It's been about getting them to realise that history is not just rote learning facts that can help you to win a quiz. Obviously that's an enjoyable exercise, but it's not all that history is. It's really helped them to develop their substantive, disciplinary and mostly procedural knowledge. They can see that history is an active subject, and the questions that we've been asking of the past and of the archive changes over time. They were really engaged by this idea of history from within. It resonated with them in ways that I didn't really anticipate before we started teaching the inquiry. But navigating the problems that the people were presenting and the concerns that they could read from the source material helped them to navigate and articulate their own feelings about current affairs today, to help to develop their emotional literacy in a way that I could never have imagined. It's been really powerful. I think projects of this kind are really important for illuminating the experiences of people in the past and acknowledging that people in the past went through exactly the same sorts of problems, not exactly the same in different contexts, but the same sorts of struggles and problems that we go through in our own society. So by illuminating those stories to our students, we're giving them a way to navigate and articulate how they feel as well, which I think is really important for them and their not just academic development, but also their holistic development moving forwards beyond school.
On the face of it, they couldn't be more different. Mass observation was an anthropology of ourselves. It was an attempt to capture ordinary people's lives, their customs, their habits, their voices, whereas the Neville Chamberlain Archives is a great man archive. It's the archive of the Prime Minister. But what I think this project illustrates is actually the space between and the way that they actually meet, and the way that using a different approach, a different method, taking the emotional turn, allows us to ask the same kind of questions about what seemingly are very different kinds of materials.
In 1939, Penguin published a second edition of one of Mass Observation's short books called Britain by Mass Observation, largely about appeasement and about the month of the Munich crisis. And it draws really heavily on these crisis diaries that people sent in, recording their thoughts and feelings during that turbulent month. It shows us a couple of things. It shows us the increasing interest in public opinion, in getting to know people's kind of thoughts and feelings. It shows us, it's kind of precursor that shows us how important this is going to be in the Second World War, in a time of total war. You know, you need to know what people are thinking and feeling. I think it shows that there's an increasing public interest in knowing what the public, what people like us are thinking and feeling. And I think that really resonates today as well. If we look around us with this kind of chaotic social media landscape, there are definitely some kind of interesting parallels between the late 1930s, the interest in the public, and people's voices, which are everywhere today.
So a lot of the material is 80 plus years old. So I think it's important for teachers to think of innovative ways to access the material. So that's perhaps thinking outside the box. So thinking about the letters that Neville wrote to his sisters and those that they sent back to him. This isn't just a Prime Minister, this is someone's brother, this is a family man. Also, perhaps teachers might be able to think of some themes that come up in the archive that resonate today. So themes relating to housing, themes relating to poverty, themes relating to war. So all of these are options to make the archive accessible to modern audiences. Libraries are not scary places. All of the material that we hold here is accessible to everybody to learn from and to enjoy.
Well, the next phase is we've now made a feature film called The Nervous State, and the phase we're at now is to actually bring it to the people, bring it to new audiences, and to get a reaction and a response to what we've done creatively. Well, what is so satisfying about this project is the way that it has evolved organically and in its own ways. Much of what we planned we've achieved, but then so much more above that. And that's because of collaboration. That's because of knowledge exchange. That's because bringing different people, different sectors to work together, we start asking different questions. We want to do other things. We want to be creative together. A lot of it depends on funding, and some of that is not always easy to secure. But as long as we can keep it going, it's amazing to think about what we can achieve.